are like so important. At the start, it's really hard because you feel like you have to approach this by yourself. You feel like you have to, everything that you're doing, you feel like you have to do it by yourself. But once you get to the really big concepts and you stop being excited about, you know, oh, I've never worked with a light. Let me just try this and this little technique and this little technique. Once you stop being excited about those little techniques and you really want to see what does this mix with this look like or this mix with this look like, you got to understand how to delegate. And so managing a team is super important to just like, in general, as I said, understand what the client wants so you can delegate your time. Delegating is genuinely the most important thing, I think, in any job. There's so much time that's wasted that of you trying to just compete with people that you don't need to compete with. If you have the budget and you're a director, direct. Don't try and worry about color grading it, because there's people that don't care to leave their house and sit in front of a monitor their whole life and just want to color grade. Why would you compete with those people? It doesn't make sense. Same thing goes for editors. Same thing goes for retouchers. If you have a style, sure, collaborate with them, because there's still people that will, that's all they want to do. And if you have other things you got to focus on, don't stress it just because you want to keep a bit extra of the budget. As long as you got your fee in there, cool. That's what you got to focus on. So I can't stress it enough. Delegate everything you can. And if you can't delegate, then understand where your limits hit, because the second you start doing too much is when a lot falls apart. And so I think that's a huge point to focus on. Basically, I feel like a lot of the team members I go with, depends if you're working with female or male artists or whatever the clientele necessarily is, you have to, the priority of whatever the budget goes to is what makes them comfortable. With females, you have to, like, majority of the time, focus on glam, nails, all that. That's a huge part that makes them comfortable. That's basically the start of it all. And then, if you have the budget for it, get a producer. It'll make your life so much easier. But if you don't, it's not necessarily as necessary. I think, like I said about people who just color grade their whole life, there's people that only care about looking at what lights do and understanding how to operate equipment safely. These are super heavy stands, super heavy sandbags. Like, anything gets thrown around, you don't look unprofessional. And then more than that, I've seen people like get knocked out on set. Like, you don't want to play around with a gaffer or with a light tech. You definitely want one of those, because it's completely changed my work to have somebody on that team. For both female and male artists, I think stylist, super important. Collaborate with your stylist if you can, really understand. Send them mood boards of what the styling should look like, because you want to be able to communicate that. I just had a shoot yesterday where the artist wanted to style himself. That's what he wanted to do. And he came super underprepared, so we cut the shoot like an hour short because he was just like, I don't have anything I want to wear. I don't want to take any more pictures. Purely just because he didn't like any of the outfits that he brought. It had nothing to do with the pictures, because the pictures all are getting used for the album. Has nothing to do with any of that. It's just purely because he brought the wrong stuff in a suitcase. So if you can delegate to a stylist, it's usually good to do that. Set design depends on where you're starting, your building blocks of your creativity are. If set design is a huge thing and it's not achievable at all, then that might be a higher priority than a lot of these. But for me, I like shooting really practical. I'll do set design when I need it, but I'll shoot a lot outdoors. I don't love shooting in studios unless there's set design. A lot of times these budgets don't necessarily have too much of a set design unless you're pushing art. Art department is extremely expensive. Unless I have a budget of more than $10,000, I very rarely allocate $2,000, $3,000 to somebody who's doing set design. It's so hard to allocate that while you're also worrying about stylists, which are expensive. The way that stylists work, just so you understand the money, whatever the piece actually costs, if they want to rent a Rick dress, that's $4,000, it's 20%. You're paying 20% of that. So that's also all being charged to you. And so if you're asking for 6 looks, stylists get expensive. And that's just what you're paying for the clothes. That's rental fees. Then stylists are also going to charge you, depending on which one you work with, could charge you $1,500, $2,000 on top of that. Now you got $5,000 of your budget that just went to styling. So you really got to understand where any of that goes. like I said, it all depends on what's priority is what makes the client comfortable, and then priority is what is your building block, your first building block for all that. And then simple, and this sometimes, like, I love getting people money with this, but also there's a lot of kids who are hungry that will do this. I'm still hungry to do this sometimes. Is just PAing, photo assisting, whatever it needs to be. Just have people extra hands on set. And it's better if they know what they're talking about. If I can tell somebody, yo, grab my 17 to 35 millimeter lens. If they can do that, simple. But just extra hands on set. You never know if you gotta run downstairs to grab a water. You don't know if you gotta do any of this, and you don't wanna break. Once you're already kind of in the momentum of the shoot, everything's starting to feel good. The first 15 minutes of every shoot is gonna be fairly rough. So once you get in the momentum, you don't wanna break that with stupid things like making sure I get somebody from downstairs that they just showed up to the shoot late, or doing little things like that and worrying about coming down from a ladder to move a stand, or like I said, extra hands are always super helpful. I think the main people you gotta think about who you're like working with is people who can adapt, and people who can adapt are usually down to collaborate with a lot, because they, like I said, they're down to play as many roles as they need to. So I think the idea behind incentivizing somebody is, like I said, if you can get exposure out of it, sure, that's a great incentive. But if not, make it feel like it's something that they haven't done before. If I go to a normal glam makeup artist and they have, I just say, yo, do what you do at these shoots that you post on your page, they're gonna ask for money. But if I'm like, yo, I got this idea, can we try this? If they're excited about it, you gotta make them excited. Like you said about the other clients, like you gotta make them excited. If they're excited, they're incentivized. I have teams from here, New York, LA that are all down to do the most random shoots. And it doesn't matter who's there, it's the most random shoots. And if there's no budget behind it, we're still most likely gonna do it. It's gonna be cool. We throw it on a portfolio and it just runs the money up overall. And main thing that I didn't talk about with teams always get way more money. One person, they don't understand why we might need to give somebody one person 15,000, 20,000, 10,000, 7,000, or even 5,000. They don't understand those numbers for one person. What does one person pull from that? How much are they bringing in home? How much are they using on the shoot? They don't understand that. Now, if I come to somebody and I'm like, yo, I got 8 people I gotta pay. We're here on set for 12 hours. I got 8 people I gotta pay. I'm on tour for this long. I gotta pay an editor home that's gotta deal with the documentary because I gotta focus on this or that. You gotta understand that teams always make more money. So if you can get around a team, you will usually just get way more gigs in general. And then, yeah, I think, like I said, building blocks. I think a huge thing is for your creativity, where does it start? Like I said, for me, a lot of my shoots start with, does this location look cool? Now, how do I exaggerate at this location? How do I minimize at this location? How do I really use this location to its full extent? So that's a start for me. I will usually, all my concepts, all my mood boards, all that come from a location usually. But it's different for other people. I know that people will focus on makeup. And as I said, if that's it, then makeup's way more of a priority to you. So you gotta understand what's your building block, same as producers, music producers. Some producers don't know how to play a single key on a keyboard, but they're gonna start off with loops. They could have the hardest drums. They're gonna start off with loops though, because that's the start of their whole creativity. You don't understand where everybody has their own start. So whatever the start to your creativity is will usually be your priority for a lot of shoots.